Now let's take a look at using multiple input parameters. And in the movie where we talked about input parameters, you'll remember we added this last name input parameter, and we gave it a default value of Abel, just by adding the equal sign and whatever our default value we wanted it to be after our data type. So I'm going to now remove that. And by the way, if you will look in the working files folder for this chapter, you will see a stored procedures input parameters.sql code example, and all this code is in there. Now the code for input parameters and multiple parameters are all in the same file. So you'll see that listed for both of these videos. But notice all we're going to do to add a separate variable is we are going to put a comma at the end of our first one, get a new line, and do @first name, give it a data type, varchar 40, and we won't put a comma at the end of that one, so we've just got a comma separated list right here, still above the as. And by the way, if I put the variable underneath the as statement, then it's a variable that I can set and manipulate in my code right here. But these are set when getPhone is called, and they have to be passed in. Well, where could we use that? Well, we could say where last name is like last name and first name like @first name. And that should take care of us. And so now when we call getPhone, we're going to have to pass two parameters in. So once again, I'm going to highlight all of my code, use Alt-Proc to change my getPhone stored procedure. Notice my command completed successfully. And so now when I run this, I have to pass last name and first name. Notice I have to pass last name, then first name. Now I'm going to call this and I'm going to pass Abel, comma, Catherine. And when I execute both of those with getPhone, notice there's Catherine Abel. Now I'm going to Control R, and I want you to notice that if I misspell Catherine, I call her Catherine Abel, execute it, I don't get a result back. Why? Because there's not a Catherine, there's a Catherine, right? Just like that. Pretty neat. Now, what if I want to switch those? I want to do these backwards. I can do this. If I'm not going to use them positionally, I will have to spell them out on how I'm going to push them in. Let me pull that down so you can see what I did there and tell it which one I'm using. So notice it's expecting to see last name, then first name. Well, if I want to change that, I can tell it this is the first name, this is the last name, and that's how I would do that. It's kind of rare that you see that, but you can see that out there. But that is how to use multiple variables, and you just plug these in where you need them in your where clause or whatever. And we'll talk about dynamic SQL a little bit later on when we need to plug variables in other places in our code. But that's a real quick look at using multiple input variables in your stored procedures. And just like before, we talked about the power of stored procedures, I can just keep listing. And so I could add as many input variables as I would like, input parameters, I could say, to my stored procedure as I would like. There's no practical limit to it. So jump on this, start coding, start playing. If you've never seen this before, there's a serious light just came on in your brain and you just got exposed to some serious power with Transact SQL code.